From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined, as always, with our super producer, Dylan, the Tennessee pal, Fagan. Most importantly, you are you. You are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. If you are listening to our strange news program, the evening it publishes, folks, friends, and neighbors, welcome to Monday, September 15th, 2025. We have so much to get to. We're going to figure it out as we go along. As Bill O'Reilly once said, we're working live. We want to keep this short, so just so everybody knows, there are robber bees in British Columbia.
What are robber bees?
Well, thanks to our friends at CBC News, particularly the journalist Lauren Vanderdeen, we know that robber bees are invading apiary shops. Apiary just being the fancy name for beekeepers. Robber bees, that's a description for bees that try to take honey from another colony's hive. Now, we are not apiarists, correct, so far?
No, not that I know of, not unless I have a secret bee certification hanging around somewhere. I don't think, I don't remember taking that class.
The answer is not yet, but we are aware that that's kind of a move.
On behalf of the bees, not on behalf of the beekeepers, right? Now, this is a story that is very close to Dylan as well as to ourselves, because we love a heist and we love a bee and we love some honey.
Yeah, honey is one of the best things you can put on some yogurt. Let's go.
Let's go. That's our cold open. And we have returned. We've got a lot of breaking news happening as we're recording. We're going to get into some conversations about commando operations that reached the Western world recently. We were on the fence off air about whether or not we were going to give a real pill, a real scumbag, any kind of attention. Just know an evil person went to jail after building an empire based on sexual exploitation. They've been sentenced to 27 years in federal prison, but it's not who you're thinking of. I hate that I have to say that. It's not Epstein list related.
How did I miss this? I don't think I know who you're talking about, Ben.
It's adult entertainment related.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, a guy named Michael James Pratt pled guilty in June in federal court in San Diego for being an absolute POS. Now, we try to keep this a PG-13 show, except for our terrible jokes, which are probably, in general, not suited for the public. We just want you to know that the wheels of justice may grind slow, but exceedingly fine. Now, with that news, and you can find it on your own, there's tons of AP articles and government statements about this. There is something that we wanted to open the show with regarding the actions of ICE here in the United States. As we were coming in to record over the weekend, we learned that a town in Georgia got hit in a way that, in a conspiracy, you could argue that triggered geopolitical tensions or added more octane to the fire. There is a Hyundai factory out in a small town in Georgia called Elabel. Have we ever been to Elabel, you guys?
I've never even heard of it.
No, but you've come pretty close if you've ever visited Savannah and that whole area down there on the coast of Georgia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, back in 2023, Hyundai Motor and LG Energy said they were going to team up to make a ton of money and a ton of cars, right? They made a $4.3 billion US dollar investment. And on September 4th, 2025, we're recording on September 9th, by the way, folks, American law enforcement conducted an immigration raid. Now, we've heard a lot about these raids occurring across the United States. In this case, the Hyundai Motor Group Meta Plant America, which is its technical name, it was raided, and approximately something between 475 to a little south of 500 workers were detained. And Homeland Security itself described this as the largest immigration enforcement operation at a single location. They got a ton of people, over 300 Korean nationals on visas, by the way, to supervise the creation and the deployment and the operation of this plant. And we'll tell you what, folks, this was a very difficult day to be a diplomat.
Yeah, well, it's a really tough situation, too, because it's complicated. Some of the people who got caught up in that raid did have visas that were valid and good to go. Some of the people who were caught up in that raid were overstaying those visas, right? There's each individual human being that ends up in that 475, human being group has their own situation, right? So then it becomes extremely complicated as you go through, let's say, as the South Korean diplomats fly here immediately and begin negotiating and trying to figure out, well, how the heck do we fix this? Because this doesn't look good for anybody. This isn't good for a large number of human beings, and they're all working to make you money, Uncle Sam, by the way, with car sales and with all of the manufacturing and everything, and on an entire community that got built up around that facility, right? I mean, there's some great stories in here just about the South Korean families that literally grew a town out of nothing because of that one Hyundai facility there. And it's all just to say it's complicated, it's not fun, and it doesn't look great, especially considering the giant energy deal that was made between the U.S. and South Korea in July for, again, hundreds of billions of dollars.
Right. Let's talk about that. So in July of 2025, ROK, South Korea, they spent about $100 billion in U.S. energy. And then additionally, they made an investment to the tune of $350 billion generically in the United States. And they did this as a quid pro quo. It was an olive branch in expectation that there would be a lowering of tariff rates imposed by the United States. We further need to establish how the provenance of this, which is just the fancy word for origin story. So the origin story is that ICE needs to justify the massive investment in its own apparatus, right? Anybody familiar with any sort of federal level agency understands that if you don't seem to spend all the money that is in your budget will be cut the next year. And that leads to a lot of hilarious time zone dependent frantic conversations around the end of October. Right now, we know that a Marine Corps veteran who is currently running for the 12th Congressional District of Georgia, going by the name of Tory Branham, went to the public and said, acting upon her own cognizance, she had heard safety concerns and she had heard rumors, whispers in the wind about undocumented people working at this facility. And so she started recording conversations, being a little spoopy-doop about stuff, and then took everything she gathered, submitted it to the ICE website, and then ICE made the call. Now, at this time, we have to be completely honest. There's going to be a lot of scuttlebutt about the type of visa, right? There is a specific type of visa that is fairly limited that allows people with a high level of acumen, technical expertise, to be in a place for a very contained amount of time.
Is that the 90-day visa thing that we had heard about?
It's around 90 days.
Okay.
It's around 90 days. And the idea here is that the South Korean nationals, who are the boffins in this case, would get in, show you how to make the thing happen, build the house with you, and then they would return. Idea being that their company, Hyundai, would probably later send them to do something very similar in another country, because that's how it works when you're at that level of expertise. The issue now is that the South Korean government is super dupes pissed. And that's I'm using the technical term in international relations. Another one would be they see this as bellicose activity on the side of Uncle Sam. And there are more questions to come.
Well, yeah, why? The question is, why the hell would you do this? If you look at what Stephen Schrank said, he's the lead Georgia agent of the Homeland Security investigations, because we talked about
That's
how
correct.
ICE and Homeland are now kind of one thing, doing their business.
And he was SAC for this, by the way. Special agent in charge.
Okay, all right. Well, there you go. SAC, Stephen Schrank. Let's get that on a business card somewhere. He said, here's a quote from the AP News article I'm looking at. He says that some of the detained workers had illegally crossed the U.S. border, while others had entered the country legally but had expired visas, or had entered on a visa waiver that prohibited them from working. He said that most of the people detained were taken to an immigration detention center in Folkston, Georgia, near the Florida state line. None has been charged with any crimes yet. And this was reported on the 8th of September, so yesterday as we record. All of this stuff, all this huge action, right? All the money spent, the man hours, all the resources, all that stuff to detain, almost 500 people, maybe over 500 people, send them somewhere else and not charge anybody?
Right. We want to thank 3 journalists in particular from the AP article we're referencing. That would be Russ Bynum, Kate Brumbach, and Hyungjin Kim. We know that of the officially detained 475 people, more than 300 were South Korean nationals. We also, just to explain everybody, this is not a place that makes cars. This is a place that makes batteries. And this occurs in step with other larger concerns in the technological arms race. So let's hold for a moment some empathy, and let's say you are the foreign minister of South Korea and you get this wild ass call. Dylan, I hope there was an appropriate sound cue. And you have to go to the U.S. government and say, first off, guys, what's going on? You know what I mean? I thought you guys liked technological aptitude. I thought you liked
money.
What we agreed on earlier. Did you not get the check?
Don't go throwing earlier in my face, man. Come on.
Yeah. And the U.S. is like, oh, that's in the past or whatever.
Exactly.
This is the way it works when you get kicked out of a country, like when you are persona non grata. The way it's supposed to work is that you get a flight back to your country of origin. Now, that has not been occurring, to be completely clear. This is not an ideological point. This is an operational point. There are people who've never been to South Sudan and never wanted to go, and they're being shipped off like a crate of eggs over there without consent, honestly, often without legal counsel. So South Korea said, okay, the reason they hurried across the Pacific was to say, okay, these are South Korean citizens. These are our nationals. These are our guys. We need a charter flight back to South Korea, and we need it post-haste, because if you, Uncle Sam, have decided to get all squirrely and weird about this, you're not going to be the ones who Shyamalan us. You know what I mean?
That's right. They're getting froggy.
They're getting froggy. And David Attenborough.
What is it? Wax that scrong? Scratch that.
Or no, wax that sklounce? No.
Sklounce.
Drax that sklounce.
Yeah, you feeling froggy?
Right.
Gonna jump.
Oh, God help me if any Terrys are feeling froggy.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Wax that scalp.
That's the best.
Yeah.
It lives rent free in my head, but I can never remember what the words are.
Yeah. I said that directly to Keegan Michael Key's face, and he just kind of stared at me. I quoted his own thing to him. Whoops.
He forgot. He did a lot of sketches. The guy's a very busy man. Yeah.
It's often weird to hear yourself quoted back to yourself.
I know.
Yeah. And Keegan's great, by the way. Check out his work on 13 Days of Halloween.
Yeah, season 1, baby.
Phenomenal. And we also know this is occurring in step with some breaking news that we mentioned last week in our listener mail program. If you think stuff is bad here in the U.S., the government of Israel has fired upon the capital of Qatar and fired upon Doha in what is still sort of fog of war as we're recording. We're keeping our finger on the pulse of the news. The official explanation targeting leaders of Hamas and the official confirmation, depending upon which government you inquire of, is that the U.S. greenlit this because the U.S. has, as we all know, a military base in the area.
It's weird. It's one of those things that you don't expect to see on a news feed. It's kind of a wild move. And, you know, they're saying it's in response to something, right? Like that's why they took action. Guys, it's kind of weird, and it kind of makes the connection. You tell me. I'm seeing a connection between this story, the Red Sea cables story, and the story that we talked about, I can't remember when, maybe a week or two ago, about the Microsoft Azure servers and Israel's mass surveillance of Gaza, and trying to figure out where in all of that, if any of it's actually connected, and then to the direct strike allegedly on Hamas leaders there in Doha. I don't know.
Or the Iranian strike on U.S. military base by Contained, which the U.S. did, just between us and the NSA, 100% green light. We also have, this is why I wanted to tease this in our listener mail. These things don't occur in a vacuum. That's why we appreciated your correspondence, HR, and that's why we wanted to bring this story and why we foreshadowed it a little bit. Qatar is officially, understandably pissed. Let us also consider, however, that upon U.S. encouragement, Hamas leaders met in Doha to negotiate a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. So Uncle Sam told them where to go. There's no way around it. That was a proposed meeting spot that was supposed to be kind of Switzerland, the Middle East. And now the rules of the game have changed partway through the game. A conspiracy is indeed afoot. There is so much more to get to, especially when we're talking about tech shenanigans. We've been tracking a story for a long time regarding Western-based folks and what the Western-based companies, I should say, and what they do or do not know about where their products go. We don't even have time to talk about the unilateral murder of civilians in international waters on behalf of the U.S. forces, including most recently the huge seizure of cocaine out in the Pacific. We also don't have time to talk about the flotilla going toward Gaza as we record here on September 9th. We do know that friend of the show, the creator of Colonial Outcast, Greg Stoker, is aboard the flotilla. And politics aside, let's just keep it, Dylan. It's bad for people to die. And it's shameful that has become a hot take.
I mean, it's not that it's even a hot take. It's just like so numbed by all this stuff, whether it be the shootings or these, conflicts, or it's just so easy to get so overwhelmed that you can't even process it or even register each individual life because it can just break you. Then you got to figure out a way to strike the balance, I mean, we like to maintain empathy, but also not to be crushed by the weight of it. I'm not trying to be soapboxy about it, but it's really soul sucking.
It's like it's like a recent story from NPR that I feel stood out to all of us about what is now being called the school shooting industry. Things are happening quickly. Things are rightly making people anxious. We want to hear your thoughts on this and this series of events that we are clearly connecting, and not without reason. The connections may become more clear as we proceed across the following days, weeks, and months. For now, we're going to take a word from our sponsor, and we'll return with more strange news.
And we've returned. There is an entire, just as you mentioned right there at the end there, Ben, there is an entire episode we have to do on the school shooting industry. We found an NPR article here titled "The School Shooting Industry is Worth Billions and It Keeps Growing." It's as heard on All Things Considered. Meg Anderson is the author there. It was posted on September 8th. And it is all about the companies that are designing and selling things to schools across the United States to protect children from school shooters. Surveillance equipment, walls that are fortified, weapons for officers who are going to be there, to have stashed somewhere on hand at the school in case something goes down.
Mandatory training for educators who,
yes,
again, cannot say no and will not get a break from their regular duties.
And kids like my son and my girlfriend's daughter, who are both at school today, going through an active shooter drill as we speak. They are finishing up classes and doing that as like a, hey, everybody, let's pretend like somebody's got a gun and rolling through the school. What do we do? And then they go through all the stuff using the
active
materials.
Shooter drills, I believe is what they call them, right?
Mm-hmm. I think they call a full lockdown or something like that.
Dude, I get text messages from the school district every time something like that happens at my kid's school. And it's multiple times a week.
Well,
and lately, my kid just started driving, and it's like going through the TSA to get into class, to get into the school every morning. So they're constantly late, and it's not their fault. And it's like they don't have pre-check. But it's insane. They just started instituting all this stuff this year.
Yeah. And it's all changing. It's going to continue to change because guess what? There is a lot of money in it. But on one hand, it's great that there's preparedness and safety, right? Especially as a parent or just as a thinking person. You want to protect people, especially kids, and we read the news, we see all the terrible things happening. There are ways to increase safety, but it certainly is weird that it's a huge industry of its own that's being built up. It just feels odd. I think we should do a whole episode on the details there, because most of this is just, emotion coming out and feeling some of the creepiness with your child dealing with the stuff. But let's leave that there for now. We'll come back to it at a later date. Let's jump to something a little more out there, a little more thought-provoking. Guys, 10 years ago on our YouTube channel, Conspiracy Stuff, we made several episodes about drugs. One of them was titled 3 Hallucinogens That Might Cure Addiction. It's a fantastic episode, and you should check it out. Very excellent work by our colleague, Mr. Ben Bolin, there on camera. It's one of the stand-up vlog episodes, and we go deep on things like ketamine and things like magic mushrooms and potentially LSD and all these other psychedelics that were 10 years ago on the table as potentially a drug therapy for addiction and for things like that. Then we've talked over the years, I don't even know how many times, guys, on Strange News and Listener Mail and in a couple one-off episodes, we've talked about the potential for psychedelics to play a role, at least, in helping someone who is dealing with addiction or anxiety or, name your thing that someone's going through that is based in a mental place. These drugs potentially are thought to potentially hold the key in some way. Well, there is new research coming out right now. ABC News reported on it on September 4th. You can look it up. It's titled, LSD Shows Early Promise as a Potential Anxiety Treatment.
It's fascinating. I guess it seems like lately the conversation is more revolved around psilocybin.
Yes.
And the idea of microdosing and stuff. I didn't realize you can microdose LSD as well. Like
Yes.
it comes in all kinds of different formats, but in my mind, in the past, it's always been such an all-encompassing, scary, overwhelming hallucinogen, and it's something that I've stayed away from for a very long time because the last handful of times I've done it, and when I was younger, it wasn't good. It was just too much, and I'm like, I got too much going on in my mind to deal with that. But I did find out as a friend of mine in New York who gets these gel tabs and cuts them into tiny, tiny, tiny little fragments, and you can take a very nondescript dose that acts similarly to microdosing on psilocybin. And he reports a lot of the same things. And I know this is not a legal, clinically approved process, but it is the same stuff. And it's nice to see some support for that.
Well, interestingly enough, this study, rather than focusing on microdosing, is focusing on giving people a one-time dose of LSD that is much higher in the 100 to 200 microgram dosage.
The heroic dose.
Yes. This is just a preliminary trial, right? It was published in JAMA Medical Journal, and it is saying a single dose of this lab-made LSD-like chemical. So imagine the way Delta 9 and 8 and 10 and all those things are kind of like THC, kind of like
an analog.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's very similar, but it's a lab created. Well, like LSD is a lab created thing, but it's a whole separate thing. So it's not lysergic acid in the way.
Is it 2CI or one of those lab chemical equivalents that were kind of popular some years ago?
I don't know those. This one is called MM120 or MM120.
Got it.
So it's a single oral pharmaceutical dosage given one time, and then people who took this study, there were 198 adults who took some dosage. They had a varying dosage that they gave some folks, and then a placebo. And they found that after 12 weeks of studying these folks, 12 weeks, one dose, they found that the generalized anxiety, at least as reported by these folks, improved by about 5 to 6 points more than a placebo when they took that 100 to 200 milligram dosage one time. And again, we're talking about generalized anxiety here. So it's generalized anxiety, guys. I don't know how you would describe it other than what the words together imply. Just they're
inexplicable bad vibe.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah,
yes,
that's
what
fantastic.
I
fear. Yes. 100%.
Just in general, just not feeling great about a lot of stuff and anything that's going down. It would be incredible if there was some kind of prescription you could get where you literally go in, once every couple of months, twice, 3 times a year, take a dose, and now you're back on track and you're no longer suffering from a lot of the, again, kind of like the chains your brain can put on you sometimes.
I mean, people report that from taking what they would call like ego obliterating doses of LSD, like a one-time thing where all of a sudden everything hits a little different, or you make these connections that are very meaningful, or you just find a new way of reframing things like addiction. But it's also like, it's fascinating. I'd love to, are there any reports from of these experiences and like what resulted, or like actual, on the ground reports, or are we just looking at like more database stuff?
What I found is just a small write-up, and then you can actually go to JAMA and then look at the thing. I did not pay for it to look at the entire study. Here's a quick quote from somebody who was involved, Harriet DeWitt.
Amazing.
PhD, professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Neuroscience at the University of Chicago. Quote is, all 40 people assigned to the 200 milligram dose reported perceptual changes that may be part of the therapeutic effect. We don't know, but it wasn't necessarily an adverse effect.
We would also like more funding.
Yeah, and more LSD if that's cool.
More LSD, please.
I don't know. It's just a fascinating thing. We don't know anything yet. Phase 3 trials are underway right now, so we'll know more, in a couple of maybe years. And then I wanted to do a little juxtaposition with that story and this other one coming out of The Guardian. 4 hikers on magic mushrooms, one with debilitating high, rescued in New York.
Saw that one, man. Set and setting, like Ben likes to say. The raw wilderness maybe isn't the best place to take that amount.
Yeah, who knows? And the juxtaposition is just to show that these types of drugs are not to be taken lightly, right? It is the set and setting thing that we've discussed before on this show. Make sure you know where you are, who you're with.
Yeah. These poor four folks. ingested their psychedelics out in the Strait of Macau, and they started walking.
Yeah. Here's a quote from the article. They were found. They're in the Catskills Mountains. They're in New York, and they were lost there. There was an emergency satellite call that said, "Hey, there's a group of 4 hikers lost near a giant ledge in the Slide Mountain Wilderness."
It's called Giant Ledge is the name of the place.
Yeah.
In the Slide Mountains Wilderness. These sound like very dangerous places.
You got to get there. You'll know what they're talking about.
I believe it.
Non-American listeners, we know this sounds like beat me here, Dylan, bullshit, but consider also the Grand Canyon, which measures up to the height.
Absolutely.
It is indeed, Graham.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've never been to this specific area, Giant Ledge, but there are elevations ranging from 1,100 feet to 2,600 feet with sheer cliffs and drops. Now imagine being super high on mushrooms. Yikes.
It's giving me anxiety just thinking about it.
According to the article, complicating matters for the group of hikers was the fact that they had also lost their car keys. Sorry to laugh at it.
It is funny. My buddy Jonesy on the Weird AF News podcast talked about this, and I believe there's a twist. Didn't they find the car keys in like a really odd place that like some people that are way too high on acid might have hidden them? Like put yourself in that situation where like, well, we got to get rid of the car keys, man. You know, I mean, it's like,
well, who knows? And it was probably a terrifying experience for these guys.
Was under a log or something, or what?
They found one of those bags, like a sling bag or something, and it just had the keys in it. Here's a quote. Rangers provided a courtesy ride to the subjects' rental lodging. That's where they were staying. They added that Ranger Russell Martin hiked back up the following day and found a sling bag with the keys under a log in tall ferns. So good on you, Ranger Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah. He also said, I'm not an expert in mushrooms, but these gentlemen definitely rode highs and lows.
That's very diplomatic, man.
Yeah.
Good on you, Ranger Russ.
There you go. That's all for me, guys.
Be careful out there.
Well, anything that has amazing potential for the positive probably has potential for the negative too. So as we've said before on the show, just think really hard before you do something like that, but also try and be open to the possibility that something like that could hold a key to helping people. Mm-hmm. All right, we'll be right back.
And we return with today's last segment on the Strange News Weekly podcast from Stuff They Don't Want You to Know. Guys, I really am excited about this one. It's intense. It's a little heavy. I do think that it is worth an episode on its own, and that is largely because I immediately asked the question when I saw this story. Sweden has a crime problem? Sweden just seems, and I know that's totally, it's absolutely overgeneralizing, and, you know, there's crime everywhere, but it just seems like such a lovely, idyllic place with, like, you know, socialized medicine, and everyone's just very happy. Apparently the quality of life is very good. But yeah, as it turns out, apparently gang warfare, like organized crime, is up in a big way in the country of Sweden, and teen girls are being used as assassins in these really brutal and bloody turf wars.
This is real.
This is very real. CBS News had this report that came out just a couple of days ago. Teenage girls are hiring themselves as hit women in Sweden's organized crime war, keen to prove they are more deadly and ruthless than young men. And that's according to prosecutors who are trying to put the crackdown on this type of activity. I had a case involving a 15-year-old girl, said prosecutor Ida Arnell, recruited to shoot someone in the head. She was able to choose the type of mission she wanted. In other words, to aim at the guy's door or his head. She chose the head. She was arrested with a 17-year-old male accomplice who pulled the trigger, leaving the victim clinging for life after being shot in the neck, stomach, and legs. Apparently, this is part of an absolute epidemic there of young teenage women or young teenage girls putting themselves forth to offer their services to what's being described here as mobsters, organized criminals, through encrypted messaging sites often. It is... an issue surrounding the law as well, because if they are under the age of 18, it is harder for them to prosecute. Kids under 15 in particular, you're seeing even more of. Shootings and bombings, they say, are at a nearly daily occurrence, with organized crime often recruiting teenagers as young as 15, which is the age of criminal responsibility to do their dirty work on some of these encrypted apps like Telegram. In general, Arnell says, young kids are thirsty for blood on these chats. And to kind of, I don't know, echo the point that I was making earlier, at least my perception, and maybe y'all's too, Sweden has historically had a very low crime rate. But these gangs, which have emerged over the last a little less than 2 decades, around 15 years, have changed the landscape with, drug trafficking, weapons trafficking, human trafficking, things like welfare fraud, which I wouldn't really think would be in the realm of organized crime, but I guess over there it's maybe a little more lucrative. But no, that's not true. Over here, I suppose there's welfare fraud or trying to defraud elderly folks of their, Social Security and things like that. I guess it's sort of similar. So it's gotten so bad that the government is now is referring to it as a systematic threat. Here's an interesting detail here. There apparently have been infiltrations into the actual government or the infrastructure that runs Sweden's welfare system, as well as local politicians rather being bought off and bribed and perhaps even crooked as working directly with some of these gangs, as well as the education system and the juvenile detention care system. A lot of these networks operate in a similar fashion to terrorist cells, as well as having networks that extend outside of the boundaries of Sweden. So you're seeing, orchestrated assassinations, shootings, intimidations, bombings that are contracted out through these encrypted sites. I really do think there's a lot more to this, y'all. I just wanted to bring it up because I was unaware of this problem over there. And again, I know that I have probably a bit of a rose-colored glasses, perspective on Sweden. But Ben, you were telling me when we talked about this off mic that this is not exclusively within Sweden. This is something that's extending even beyond its borders to, I believe, Denmark.
Yep, that's correct.
Got it.
Oh, this is weird. There's stuff in here about crime organizations I've never heard of. Oh, I guess is that weird? Yeah, of course. We've probably never heard of these. These are crime organizations that are operating in Sweden, but again, as you said before, from another place, but operating in Sweden and other countries like Denmark, like the Rumba Crime Organization, RUMBA.
The Foxtrot Crime Network?
Yeah. Well,
not as fun as they sound.
Nah.
But headed by people with names like Rawa Majid. And
I believe that's one of Sweden's most wanted criminals, who is designated by the U.S. Treasury as being responsible for a massive swath of the illegal drug trade in Sweden.
And a full 2/3 of the people that are documented in these crimes, the kids, have also been victims themselves,
100%.
largely of sexual violence. Just to be clear, this is not something like Hit Girl from Kick-Ass.
Absolutely not. There's no romanticization implied here whatsoever, and we certainly have seen these kind of tactics as far as child soldiers, as far as other gangs here in the United States. Initiation situations where a young child, in order to join a gang, maybe the West Coast type situation is what you might be familiar with, going out and shooting a rival gang member in order to earn their stripes. So this is absolutely not unique, but it's a little interesting specifically that they're young women, and the setting just seems very, very unusual to me. But again, I know no place in the world is immune from criminal enterprise.
Especially now with decentralized operational networks. Consider also, as terrible as it is to say it, consider also the grooming networks in places like the United Kingdom, throughout Turkey, throughout Eastern Europe, and indeed throughout Germany.
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing I'm feeling a little puzzled about, because this Ismail Abdo was arrested in Turkey. And so, and he's, I guess, they call him transnational criminal organizations.
Correct.
And then the other person, Rawa Majid, he's Iranian born Kurdish Swedish, which is an interesting thing. And then operating from various other countries in that, generalized area, the super generalized area. But it's interesting that they're not Swedish gangs, right? Or if you imagine, I don't know how to describe that better than it's just not what in my mind expected when I'm hearing like Swedish organized crime.
Right. Yeah. And that's a point that we need to emphasize here, because wrapped up in these observations, accusations, this data, there's also a lot of xenophobia. That's why we're mentioning the United Kingdom, right? And the idea of, let's say it, the idea of South Asian grooming gangs or drug cartels, right? Or Albanian mafia from Taken. The idea is that if you find a villain that you can put a face on and other them, then your society is not as bad. It's just those pesky foreigners. And that's happening right now. Do check out our full episode on Japan's far right. Spoiler, Russia's paying for it.
Read the news about the U.S.,
Oh, God, 100%. And if you dig deeper, there's a lot of sources about this. So I think we maybe roll this out into maybe a deeper dive down the line, where there are some interviews and perspectives from some young people that were recruited into these organizations, oftentimes due to drug-addicted parents, abusive home lives, finding their way into drug addiction themselves, using some of these connections in order to finance their own drug addiction, and that slippery slope of like going from, say, low-level drug dealing to literally, murdering people for pay.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I guess we'll put a pin in that one for now, and I'd love to just quickly, before we wrap today, move on to a story that Matt hipped me to about the QAnon Queen, y'all. She's back. Remember this Canadian, the woman that kind of designated herself or declared herself the Queen of Canada and was telling
I want to thank everybody who reached out to us regarding this story. We got a lot of correspondence.
I bet we
on
did.
This one.
Yeah, it was Matt who told me about it. But yeah, I know for sure. It's a story we've been following. I think the way I put it was we've been following this character's journey. There's a whole situation where she took up residency in this abandoned school in a town where nobody wanted her, and there was this kind of simmering sort of feeling of like, is this a Waco type situation? Gun control is a big deal in Canada, and this arrest that we're talking about today stemmed from a potential gun charge. And it did turn out, I don't know what you guys saw, but that the guns that were recovered were actually replicas. Which means they would be non-lethal, I assume, but they still did detain this woman in Saskatchewan, Romana Didulo, the QAnon-inspired conspiracy theorist, who has basically received the support from a lot of big figurehead types online in the QAnon community, and who, basically started her own group called the Kingdom of Canada, where she seemingly has been responsible for ruining some members' lives and declaring that all of their debts were null and void and were absolved. And this led to a lot of people losing their homes and, having their utilities shut down and all of that stuff. But she had been living in the village of Richmond in Saskatchewan for the past 2 years, and apparently posted this arrest live as a stream on her Telegram channel. And in the video, you can see 3 armed officers entering a room and asking her to put the phone down and alerting her to the fact that she is under arrest. This was the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who, to what I was saying earlier, seized 4 replica handguns after searching the building and 8 RVs on the property.
I first learned about this in 2022 when you brought it to us on Strange News. You introduced.
Yeah, we've been talking about the travails of the QAnon Queen for a hot minute now.
And then one of the stories you brought in 2023 was that she stole an RV.
That's right. She did love an RV. There was a bit of a low-speed RV chase type situation. You're not wrong, Matt. But do you understand, guys? Did you read any deeper or see anything? It seems like, is this a technicality? I mean, are replicas functioning? Aren't they just, isn't that sort of the deal? They're just sort of, they've got the firing pins removed and they aren't actually lethal?
It's a little weird because we're talking about terminology that is not specifically U.S.
That's true.
So there are like airsoft style guns that are replicas of, like, let's say an AK-47 or a Glock or something like that. It looks like it, except it's got a little red tip on the end. And
Totally.
it shoots little pellets,
Remember that scene in Snatch?
Yes,
or maybe it was
I do.
Lock, Stock, and like this. My gun says Desert Eagle, whatever, and yours says replica. And then they zoom in and you see the letters. And so that was my first exposure to the idea of a replica weapon, which I think it was implying that it doesn't fire. But then there is a part of me too that because of maybe the regionalism of the terminology, maybe it just means it's like a knockoff, or it's some kind of weapon that does fire that just looks like a specific type of weapon. But that did seem to be enough to get her, though it doesn't appear that any charges have been filed. And she has been a thorn in the side of the Canadian mounted police for some time now. So I don't know, Ben, with some of the sources that the listeners threw our way, did you clock any more details than I've gleaned here?
Yeah, as you said, more to come. Perhaps we could make this an episode. There is a journey, as Matt outlined, that you've been following for some years. So again, we want to thank everybody who contacted us regarding this, especially the cryptic messages blowing up by social media that just said the Queen is dead. And thank you, folks, for keeping us on our toes.
One thing I did find, guys, is that there was some charge related to intimidating people, including a police officer.
They've been talking about that since the like there was a whole standoff kind of situation.
Yes.
Back when they took up residency in this abandoned school. And I assumed that they would have, been run out of town on a rail. But this is the first indication, at least as far as I'm concerned, that seems to have taken and that they've just been there this whole time. Which is weird. And there was implied intimidation. And I thought that in that story, there were guns involved, that they had weapons and that they were posted up on rooftops or something. But now the details are, I think it's a really good point, Ben. Maybe we collect a lot of this stuff and maybe see what happens, because there is really no further information as to what it does say that 6 of her followers were also arrested. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a tale of being taken in, and while we don't know the entire jury trial process and indictment process there in Canada, she was brought in and she elected to go to a trial by jury, right? And
of course,
but because of that thing, because of doing that, it means you're not going to be in court for a while, so you're let out. You have very specific stipulations. Like, don't go near the people that you intimidated, and don't go back to the place where you've been running a cult, and don't possess weapons. And apparently it was just a situation where maybe 1 or 2 of those conditions were not met, and then she found herself arrested again.
And again, Northern Neighbor, just to jump in here, Northern Neighbors, we are also well aware of how this ties into what is sometimes called the sovereign citizen movement. That is another piece of the pie that we look forward to exploring. So thanks again to everybody who wrote in.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I just found another source from the CBC that does have a little bit more information. She was granted bail, and that's an update, actually. This is just from yesterday. So the original story was from over the weekend.
Oh.
Let's see.
Gosh. Okay,
so it says here, she did elect to go to the trial by jury. This is a preliminary inquiry. She's scheduled to appear in court on September the 17th. Says a dozen supporters in white hats showed up to greet Didulo on Monday morning as she returned to court in Swift Current, Saskatchewan, for a bail hearing after spending the weekend in custody. For the team, secure the royal puppies and the funds. You know who to get a hold of, Didulo said.
What?
Secure the royal puppies and the funds.
Oh, like
you
her
know
doggies.
who to get a hold of.
She must have
And she then adds, in this, they have no jurisdiction. 0.
Okay.
Let's follow up on this, guys. This is fascinating stuff. This does seem like it's gonna, because I don't understand what the charge is. Like, it seems like it was all on the pretense of weapons charges, but then they only uncovered these replicas. It doesn't even say what she was charged with. It just says that she received bail. That's very interesting. There's something missing here, y'all. Let's keep an eye on it. That's all from me today.
And thus ends our weekly strange news segment for this evening. We can't wait to hear from you folks. As you know, your input helps us create these segments as well as episodes in the future. We would love to hear your thoughts on every little thing we have discussed. You can find us on a telephone. You can find us on an email. You can find us on the lines.
That's right. You can find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on Facebook with our Facebook group, Here's Where It Gets Crazy, on X, FKA Twitter, and on YouTube with video content galore for your perusing enjoyment and hopefully entertainment. However, on Instagram and TikTok, you can find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff Show. Give them the rest, Matt.
We have a phone number. It is 1-833-STDWYTK. Turn those letters into numbers and then give it a call. You'll hear a voice you might recognize, some music, and then you've got 3 minutes. Give yourself a cool nickname within the message and let us know if we can use your name and message on the air. If you've got more to say, they could fit in a 3-minute voicemail, and we know you do. Why not instead send us an email? We are
just the biggest absolute fans of super producer Dylan, the Tennessee pal Fagan. Dylan, no offense, man. I know it's not the statute of limitations just yet, but I'm sorry about the honeybee heist. I think you had a good idea and we should do it again. Is that okay to say on air?
Yeah, let's just let it cool off for a while and we'll get back to it.
Right on. Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.